Yes, please.
Okay, great. To finish up that last question, I just wanted to make clear that we have to disobey the government when the government commands us to do something wrong, but it's not necessary to disobey the government just to disobey the government. If the government commands you to wear a, a purple hat, there's nothing wrong with wearing a purple hat. The government has no right to force you to wear a purple hat. That's just an inconvenience, but go ahead and wear the purple hat. But you want to get the government to understand its own limits, that it doesn't have the right to aggress against people, to make people do what they want to do. That's the central point you want to get across. It's not about purple hats. It's not about something silly that the government wants you to do. You want to get that bigger point across to the government. You want the government to understand that it's not God and it can't get in the way of your conscience. So that's why civil disobedience, protests and strikes is it's not the most persuasive way to get the government to realize that it's not God and it has no right to impose its will on you by force or threats of violence. If everybody in the government understood that they have no right to steal, they have no right to compel you, they have no right to force you to do something against God's commandments, if everybody believed that, you would not have any more government because that's what government is. Government is people imposing their will on you by force or threats of violence, and that's wrong. So that's the big issue that has to be confronted. Does any human being have the right to impose his own will on other people by force or threats of violence? And the answer is no. And if you get into a big argument about the purple hat or whatever it is, it's a minor issue, and you do it in a confrontational way. Um, a, a protest is a large gathering of people which is designed to say something like, "We have more power. We have the power to impose our will on you. We have the power to be archists." And that's not the message you want to send. You don't want to send the message that we're powerful and we can impose our will on you and we can do bad things to you just like you do bad things to us. That's not the message we want to send. We want to send the message that we as human beings need to work together to eliminate aggression. And we're against aggression, and we hope you are also against aggression. And that's the message we want to convey to them. We want you, the government, to stop engaging in aggression. That's a pretty simple message, but it's a message that we can convey in a persuasive way, in a way that unites us together in this common enterprise, this common cause. We all want to eliminate violence and aggression among human beings. And the first place we need to start, well, I wouldn't even say that. Yeah, the government needs to stop its aggression, but we all engage in acts of aggression too. So we all need to work together and not as opponents, not as the protesters and the protestees, they're against each other, they're in conflict with each other. We need to say, we are working with you. We want to work with you to find peaceful solutions to human problems that don't involve aggression. And so I don't think civil disobedience in that sense, in the sense of protests and strikes, it creates an us-them mentality instead of an us all together, all of us working together to eliminate aggression. But like I say, we ought to disobey the government if the government commands us to do something wrong. If the government says, wear a uniform, pick up a gun and hurt people to support the government, well, we'd have to say, no, I'm not going to hurt people. I'm not going to I'm not going to obey your command to hurt people. That's the good kind of civil disobedience. That's where we just have to draw the line and say, no, I won't do that. But the other kind of civil disobedience where it's us versus them, I don't think is the best way to persuade the government and encourage the government and help the government. The people, the individual people in government, not the government as a thing out there, but the individual people. We want individual people to get the idea, you know what, it's wrong for me to engage in aggression. I realize I'm a government official and I have the right to engage in aggression, but we ought to say, we want them to say, individuals in the government to say, I don't really have a right to engage in aggression. I don't have a right to steal from people. I don't have a right to do these things. That's where we want them to come. And we want to support them in that. We don't want to confront them. We don't want to hurt them. We want to support them and encourage them to do the right thing. Question: how can writing effectively promote individual liberty within African cultural contexts, often emphasizing collectivism, such as the Ubuntu philosophy that you are because we are, which can sometimes be interpreted as limiting self-ownership? Well, you can have a collectivist philosophy or a collectivist thought, which isn't bad as long as the collective is voluntary. Collectives are wrong only when one person tries to be the one who collects everybody by force or threats of violence. But if we have just like I was saying with civil disobedience, you want to say to the government, we are one with you. We are with you because we are human beings and we want to work with you to eliminate aggression from our society. That's a collective approach, and that's a legitimate approach. Now, see, when you say collectivism can sometimes be interpreted as limiting self-ownership, that means in practice, it means somebody gets to take your property. You don't get to own your property. Somebody else gets to, and they get to take it in the name of some collective, in the name of some oneness thing. Okay, that's wrong. But that's because it's aggression. That's because this collective myth, this collective idea, individual people are using that collective idea to engage in aggression against other people like you, to take your property, to limit your self-ownership. And so we get back to that thing. You as an individual human being, Mr. Governor or Mrs. Governor, you do not have the right to engage in aggression and take my property. And so that's the problem with collectives, is that individual government officials use that collective idea to justify aggression. We have to eliminate that idea that aggression is legitimate. Just want to know if you are Catholic. Nope, I'm not Catholic. There's a lot of Catholic writers I like. For example, the co-founder of what's called in America, well, it's around the world actually, but it started in America, the Catholic Worker Movement. It started in the United States. The communists had a newspaper called the Daily Worker, and a woman named Dorothy Day and a fellow named Peter Morin from France started writing a rival, a competing newspaper called the Catholic Worker, and it became a larger movement. And Peter Morin, the co-founder of this Catholic Worker movement, had a pithy way of saying he was against civil disobedience as a confrontation. He said, strikes don't strike me. In other words, I don't like strikes. They don't strike me as being a good thing. So I've always liked that line from the Catholic Worker: strikes don't strike me. I don't like strikes. So I like a lot of Catholic things, but I'm not a Catholic. I'm not in any Christian denomination. I find that churches often support government aggression, and I'm completely against government aggression. I'm against all aggression, but especially government aggression, because that's an institutionalized aggression. And I just don't know of any denomination of Christians, any Christian denomination, Catholic, Protestant, Baptist, whatever, who likes radical libertarians. So I'm not any denomination, just a plain old Christian, Bible Christian. So, yeah, any other questions? I've always thought that idea of 6 degrees of separation was a kind of an interesting thought, that I know somebody and that person knows somebody, and just 4 or 5 people later, whoever it is, Donald Trump, uh, Vladimir Putin, some world leader, I suppose someday when our computers get strong enough, they might be able to actually map out the entire human race and prove that that theory is true. It's just a theory. Um, But I think that's very interesting, that something we write is just very close to somebody who can make a big decision and really change things. What is a libertarian worldview? Well, that depends on what kind of libertarian. My libertarianism stems from, it's a product of my Christian faith. And for some libertarians, they don't have, they could be atheists. So libertarians is a much larger group than a Christian or Jew or a Muslim or anyone else. I assume a Muslim can be a libertarian. And so libertarian uh, encompasses all those different people who have, for whatever reason, come to believe that aggression is wrong. But that's the basic idea of the libertarian worldview is it's wrong to engage in aggression. It's wrong to threaten people with violence. It's wrong to initiate force against people who aren't doing anything wrong. That's basically the libertarian worldview. Do not engage in aggression. Another question, as African writers passionate about liberty in Africa and with doing away with aggression, what do you suggest? Well, like I say, I think writing is good. And I would say I'm not an expert. I'm not a scholar. I don't have a PhD. I'm just an ordinary guy. And what I try to do is I try to say there are scholars out there who have written good books and explained how a society free from aggression can be very prosperous and a great place to live. And so that's what I do. I've written hundreds, if not thousands, of blog posts and web pages, and I uh, I post things on Facebook just to try to get people to look into ideas. That's what all you can do at this point is try to get people to look into an idea. And sometimes I may not do a very good job of doing that. I know, for example, we've talked about this word anarchism. Some people are offended by that word and just won't even think about it. But some people, when you say the word anarchist means not an archist, and an archist is somebody who believes he can impose his own will on other people by force or threats of violence, and that's not a good thing. Don't you agree that's not a good thing? And they say, well, yeah, I've never thought about that before. So what I would suggest is doing something that makes people think in a way they haven't thought before. Whatever that is, it's different for different people, but make people think in a way they haven't thought before. Because we all tend to, I mean, around the world, people tend to think that the government has a right to engage in aggression. The government has the right to steal. The government has a right to kill. And we have to get people to think, no, it's not right. It's not right if I kill. It's not right if my family, anyone in my family kills or steals. We know that's all wrong. But for some reason, we think it's okay if the government does it. It's okay for the government to do things that are wrong, or a Christian would say sinful. And I would say, no, it's not. Why do we think that? The reason why we think that is because we have gone to schools run by the government, and the government teaches us that they have the right to impose their will on other people by force or threats of violence. And we have to rethink that. So to do away with aggression means getting people to rethink, think for the first time about the idea that human beings can exist in a society with no aggression. That there's always going to be someone who's going to try to impose his will on other people by force, going to try to make people give him their stuff by threatening them with violence. There's always going to be someone to do that. The question is, are we as human beings better off if we don't allow that, if we say no to that? Or are we better off if we give permission to a big group of people called the government to do that on a systematic basis, where that's their whole job, is threatening people with force or violence in order to take their stuff or to kill them or retaliate or do all these aggressive and violent things? I would say we need to rethink that whole idea. It's something that human beings have thought for thousands of years now, that there has to be a Pharaoh, a Caesar, a Führer like Hitler. Somebody has to have this power of aggression and violence. And I don't think that's true. So in Africa, in America, in China, everywhere, we need to say, let's think about this idea that it's wrong for any human being to engage in aggression. Question, what could we do to change the narrative of government imposing force in the guise of leadership? Great question, because that's what they say. Leadership is aggression. Leadership means forcing people against their will to do something they don't want to do, forcing people to give to the poor, for example, and threatening them with violence, doing what you and I and the people in this group and most people would say, that's wrong. It's wrong for me to do that. but somehow it's right to do it if they're a leader. But really, what I've tried to suggest is that real leadership is um, forming a relationship with someone, maybe in the government, but someone who thinks that government is good, forming a relationship where we're supporting them and we're encouraging them to repudiate violence, to say no to violence. We are on their side. We want them to say no to those who engage in theft or murder or do bad things, and that includes the government. So we're on their side. That's what leadership is. When you help someone do what they know is right, then you're a leader. You're a peaceful leader, but you're helping them do something that they know is the right thing to do. And the right thing to do is to encourage other people to not engage in aggressive violence, not to engage in aggression. So that's what a leader is. A leader is not someone who forces people to follow him. A leader is someone who empowers people to do the right thing on their own. Um, that's what you want someone to say about you. He led me to believe that I could live my life without hurting people. That's a true leader. A leader doesn't just threaten people with violence. Another question, how do we stand against institutional aggression to a point of cooperation? There seems to be a paradox here. I could envision is not going to be easy due to political ideologies and overlapping. How do we build that bridge through writing? How do we stand against institutional aggression to a point of cooperation? Well, I'm not sure I see the paradox. You say there seems to be a paradox. How do we stand against institutional aggression to a point of cooperation? I think the solution here is to not think about trying to change an institution, but to try to change individuals in that institution. Because when people think they're a part of an institution, it's harder to talk to them. Now, we're not in a position, any one of us necessarily is in a position where we know a person who can change an institutional policy if we were to talk to them one-on-one. But that's why that 6 degrees of separation is interesting, because it might be that we know someone who knows someone who knows someone, etc., who does know a person who's in an institutional leadership position. And it might be that our message that aggression is wrong gets to our friend who sends it to a friend, his friend, and that friend sends it to her friend, and so on, and it reaches a person of institutional power. But yes, our idea has to be, if I knew someone in power in an institution, I would want to cooperate with that person. I would want to empower and support that person to realize that aggression is wrong and that they need to change the institutional policies to work peacefully rather than through aggression. So no paradox. I don't see it anyway. Tell me if I'm wrong, but tell me what I'm not seeing here. But deal with people as human beings. And I would say deal with people as human beings created in the image of God, and reach their conscience. And because everybody knows, I believe, everybody knows on a gut level, deep down, they know it's wrong to hurt people. They know it's wrong to steal. And you just have to reach that person and say, you know, this is good. And they might say, well, I've always thought that if we didn't have people who have the right to hurt people, that we would have chaos. And then you need to show them, if you're willing to think this through, if you're willing to think about that idea, there are books which show how peace and eliminating aggression leads to higher standards of living for everybody. And that's what we want, is we want a society where everybody has a higher standard of living. Everybody is developing their full potential as human beings. And every human being, I think, can be reached with that message. And it's true, they have political ideologies, they have myths, they have things that they've learned all through school because they were trained to believe that. But deep down, they know that's not true. So that's where we stand against institutional aggression by treating the people in the institutions as human beings who know on a deep level that hurting other human beings is wrong. Someone told me that NAP is not practical. We can't live in a world without chaos. Well, I think what you mean is we can't live in a world without aggression because a world without aggression would lead to chaos. I'm going to say that's what that question means. But really, aggression is chaos. The most chaotic situation that you can imagine is where everybody, I mean, like imagine a football stadium full of people or a town square full of people, and all of them are engaging in aggression. All of them are trying to hurt other people. All of them are trying to steal from other people. And that's chaos. That's a riot. That's a terrible situation. And that's chaos is when people are you can't predict, you can't make plans to run a business or to succeed in life if all of a sudden, in a chaotic way, your resources, your property is destroyed or stolen. It totally upsets your plans. It totally destroys the organization, the way you organized your business, the way you organized your plans for the future. Aggression destroys that organizational plan that you had. And so it always leads to chaos. When the government says we're going to take property, and maybe they say we're going to take it from an entire industry, we're going to nationalize the industry. Well, that creates chaos because then the investors in that industry don't know whether they're ever going to get their money back. If they think the government is going to nationalize an industry or a company, they won't invest in it because there's what they call in institutional or investors insecurity. That's a big problem with stock markets is when investors are insecure, they don't know what the future is, they back off, they don't invest. And when they don't invest, the businesses can't grow and they can't serve their consumers. So aggression it creates chaos, and government always creates chaos. Here's a book, as a librarian, I recommend. Ludwig von Mises wrote a book called Planned Chaos. And that's a great title because it says here are the people who think that they're engaged in planning and leadership, and they're doing all these good things, and yet their approach is based on violence. It's based on aggression, and it always leads to chaos. They're planning, and they can say, I don't know if they use what they really believe, but they say that they have a plan to bring prosperity to the country. But because their plan uses aggression and violence, their plan always brings chaos. It causes insecurity in investors or just in ordinary life because we don't know what the government's going to do. We don't know when the government is going to engage in aggression against us. And so that creates chaos. And that's what Mises showed is that government planning, government leadership, government organization actually creates chaos. So that's an eye-opening proposition, and hopefully that would entice people to think it through. Well, I've always thought that government planning was good and it created order in our society. Well, actually, it's the opposite because government planning is government aggression, government violence, and that always creates disorder. And that tells you the importance of education because if people are educated to believe that government violence is what brings us order, instead of believing that it's wrong for every human being to engage in violence, then we're always going to have chaos. People need to be educated to believe that it's wrong for me to hurt people. It's wrong for me to take their property. It's wrong for everybody to do that. And everybody knows it's wrong to do that. And that results in a prosperous world where people, if they can't hurt other people, then the only thing they can do in life is serve other people by creating products or services that benefit other people, raising their standard of living. We all have to understand that the only way I can raise my standard of living is by raising the standard of living of others. And if you steal from them, you're not raising their standard of living. If you vote for someone to steal from other people, a government official, that's not raising their standard of living. All of us depend to raise our standard of living. I have to do something that raises other people's standard of living. That's voluntary, that's cooperation, that's being of service and not being domineering or it's leading people by helping them see, here's how to make your life better. If you buy my product is a good product and it will make your life better. And that's leadership. You're informing them, you're helping them, you're making their life better. That's a good thing. Government leadership is violence. It's not a good thing. And the way to prevent the government from creating chaos is to prevent the government from acting like a government. That is, prevent the government from acting like an aggressor. Government is aggression. We have a statement in America's Declaration of Independence, the consent of the governed. That was what they said, that the only government you should have is one that the people choose. And that's sort of mistaken. I think that was a problem. That's one of America's founding documents, Declaration of Independence, and it talks about the consent of the governed. But the only place you have consent is in a voluntary transaction in a free market. Government is not consent. Government is imposing its will on you by force or threats of violence. If two people consent, they have a contract. But if one person does not consent and the other person tries to threaten them to do what they want to do, to govern them, then that's not consent. That's government. Government is when one person imposes order on another, his own version of order on another person. Consent is when you have a voluntary contract, a voluntary transaction in a free market. So we have to show government, we have to educate government officials, and sometimes it may be we'll just have to wait for all the government officials who exist right now to die out, and then the people say, well, you know what? We've had enough problems with being governed. We want to live in a society where everyone consents, where everything is voluntary and everything is cooperative and agreeable. We don't want any more aggression. We don't want any more violence. So we're going to we're not going to fill the empty seats. All those politicians who died, we're not going to fill their seats with a new governor. We're just going to live lives of consent and non-aggression. And that it may be that we have to wait for the next generation to experience a libertarian society. That may be true. It maybe we can move faster if we can spread the message that aggression is wrong. But either way, that's how we prevent the government from creating chaos, is to prevent the government from governing. It's a funny way to say it, but we prevent the government from creating chaos by preventing the government from governing, because governing someone is to impose your will on them by force or threats of violence. Okay, Felix is back with why he thought there was a paradox, because sometimes an institution would be preaching unity, yet it is division. They sometimes used cooperative rhetoric, strategies to conceal aggressive intentions or actions. Trump and Elon Musk firing federal workers. There is a paradox in that the government preaches unity, and yet what it really is doing is, for example, a government might preach unity by saying the rich are oppressing you, and so we have to steal from the rich and give it all to you after we take most of it for ourselves, of course. But really, that's division, because they're saying the rich are bad and you deserve to have what they have, even though they may have worked hard to get it and you didn't work at all. And that's division. And yes, they always want to speak of cooperation, but really, because they are government, they are dividing people using aggression. They're saying, give us the power to do bad things to people, because that way you'll vote for me. And it's now I'm not sure I understand how Trump firing federal workers fits into that. Not that I'm a fan of Trump. I'm not a fan of Trump. Or Elon, what's his name? I forget. Anyway, I'm having a brain gap there. But Trump firing federal workers, I'm for that, but I don't know why he's doing it. I don't know what his intentions are in the long run. But you have a lot of government workers in America who don't do anything to help other people. They don't. They're just getting paid salaries which are larger than other people in the private sector. The public sector usually gets paid more than the people in the private sector, and they're not doing anything to help people. They really aren't. Their jobs could go away, and people would not suffer. People would have their lives actually expanded because they were no longer paying the salaries of people who aren't producing anything of value. their services, their job is not a job that people would pay for voluntarily. The only reason they're getting paid a salary is because the government is taking money from people by force and giving it to them. And so firing all those government workers who aren't helping people is a good thing, because then people will be helped by being able to spend their money on things that do help them. They spend their money on things that help them because nobody spends money unless you're crazy. You don't spend money on something that's going to hurt you. You spend money when you're convinced that what I'm buying is going to help me. But people wouldn't voluntarily pay for government. They only pay for government because they're forced to by threats of violence. So it's a good thing for the government to fire its own workers if its workers aren't doing anything good and helpful. So that's a good thing. Again, I'm I'm not a big fan of Trump. He's doing some things that are good, and every president at some point in time does something that is good just because they have to maintain the appearance of being a force for good. But most of what they do is bad, and there's a lot of things I would criticize Trump for. So I'm not. I didn't vote for Trump. I certainly didn't vote for his opponent. Both sides, I think, are not good. So I don't vote for bad people to do bad things. But I hope that answers your question. Are there any other questions? It's hard for me on this side of the camera to know what to say because I don't know what people are thinking. I can only say, well, here's a few general places. Where would you like to go from here? So your questions are helpful because then I feel like I'm talking to you in exactly what you want to hear and helping you in the best and most direct way. So I do appreciate questions. And I even appreciate it when someone says, I disagree with you. I think you're wrong when you say this. And I think I think this. And then I can say, well, here's why I can either say, I've never considered that idea. Thank you for sharing it with me. Or I can say, I considered that idea once. In fact, I used to believe that. But now I'm thinking because of this and this and this, and tell you the reasons why I no longer think the way you think. And that's a helpful conversation too. So not just a question, but if you have objections to anything I've said, that's a good thing too. But I'm not seeing any questions come in. I don't want to just repeat things that I've said. But sometimes repetition is a good teacher. Sometimes it's good to hear things more than once. But right now, I don't know what one thing I would say. So I hope that this whole conversation has been helpful. Somebody said they found it encouraging. That's encouraging to me. I'm glad to be a part of a process that encourages people. But we need more people to be encouraged to say the right thing and to stand against aggression. That's the fundamental message, I think, of the libertarian philosophy is human beings don't have the right to use violence against other human beings. I see a hand being raised, but I don't know what to do with that hand.
Yeah, so Kevin Craig,
Yes.
thank you very much for the presentation. It has been a very exciting moment once again on this Freedom Writers Fellowship virtual workshop. We thank you very much. And we also thank you for answering our questions. We thank you. And also, I think you are dwelling most on the aggression side. The problem we have in our society is that people are not actually aware. I would say they are oblivious to the government use of force or what you might term aggression. They see it to be moral. So I don't know how people see aggression to be moral. There are a lot of Christians who are that support aggression, or they themselves are aggressors. So I don't know how most people see aggression. They don't see it as something evil. They don't see it as something bad. They see it to be normal in society, and it's something that human beings are born with. It is our innate ability. That's why they want the government to use force, to use threat, and people's money to even confiscate properties. They support all, but they're Christian who go to church, but they support all these government actions. So I don't know. Kevin Craig.
Yes, I think that's a
Hello.
good point. I agree with you,
Yeah.
and thank you for inviting me to this Zoom call to talk about this. It is absolutely, as writers, I think the number one thing we need to do is write. And more writing. We need to put our ideas out there in writing, get them in front of readers. So that's a very good thing. Write, write, write. Do more writing, and get it out to more people. And I think you're right. You're correct that most people have been trained to believe that government is good, but they haven't really seen that government is violence. But violence is not good. So they need to make that connection that actually government isn't governing people is not a good thing. Encouraging people, supporting people, leading people in a nonviolent way, that's a good thing. But people can do that. We can all lead people, encourage people, support people, help people experience a kind of conversion where they're no longer trying to get their own will by threatening other people with violence or initiating force. We want to help bring about that kind of conversion from aggression to support, from violence to helping people, to serving people. Instead of governing people, we want to serve people. So I see that as the main thing, is to just to say to people, have you ever thought that you and I, as individuals, are not allowed to hurt people or take their property? And yet, the government exists by taking people's property. It has to take people's property because we wouldn't give them our money voluntarily because we don't like what they're doing. So what right does the government have to take people's property and threaten them with violence when you and I can't do that? What makes the human beings in government different from us? We're human beings too. We need to write about that. It's a simple question. What right do human beings in government have to engage in violence when human beings who are not in government don't have a right to engage in violence? That's it in a nutshell. That's the whole conversation. Why is it those people can do things that other people, it would be sinful for us to do those things. It's wrong, immoral for us to hurt people and take their property. Why do people, just like us, get to do that just because they call themselves the government? We need to write about that. We need to send that message out to people. That's how. Now, I think there's other dimensions to that. For me, it's my Christian faith is why I believe that. And I think that people need to, I think that people need to approach it from that perspective. But whatever perspective that person has, they are reachable with the message. You are a human being, and human beings do not have the right to engage in violence. You think you do because you're part of this thing called the government, but where did you get that? Where does that idea come from? You need to think about that. I want to help you think about that. I'm on your side. As a human being, I'm on your side. I want to help you understand that aggression and violence don't make the world a better place. I want you to make the world a better place by repudiating violence and serving other people instead of governing them. Serving them meaning that they voluntarily cooperate with you to achieve a common purpose. And that's in just a few minutes, in just a couple of minutes, we've reached the bottom line, the crux of the issue, the most important thing to say. we are human beings. It's wrong for human beings to hurt other human beings, and make them think about it. Just our goal is to get people to think about that uncomfortable um, concept that it's wrong to govern people. It's better to serve people, to help them.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Kevin Craig. Thank you for this opportunity to speak to us. And also, guys, I hope we have all enjoyed this session today. We'll be drawing the curtain very soon, and we'll be saying bye-bye to Kevin Craig. And we hope to also invite him another time also. So,
thank you. Appreciate the opportunity. Thank you very much.
Guys, you're welcome. So, guys, what are we telling him? I think we should send some emojis to show our excitement about this session, and also to our presenter, Kevin Craig. Let's show some emojis, some emoji of enjoyment, or yes. Let's show some emojis. Let's say some congratulation messages to let's keep the message coming. Let's keep up the messages coming. Let's keep the messages coming. Yeah, so Kevin, I hope you are reading the messages of our participants and how we enjoy your session.
Thank you. It's gratifying. Thank you.
So you prepare an assignment and give to us for this week so that we can write about some issue to send it to you as freedom right. I don't know if the assignment is ready or you get it to us later. Please, Kevin, did you have the assignment to us or it will be given later on?
Put my email in there, so if anybody wants to email me and ask more questions, I'll send you some resources that will help explain more details on what I've presented.
Okay, so Kevin Craig, I hope you can run the curtains down now and this session also. Yeah, so guys, we also need to apologize for the interruptions. The few interruptions that happened, that was a technical issue. This also because you're using uh, uh, a third-party Zoom platform. That's why. So we are trying to correct all these mistakes in the future. So we apologize for the technical issues and also any inconveniences that this has caused any of us. We thank you all for your patience and hope to meet together again next week. Next week, Saturday, you'll be having Dr. Stephen Morgan presented to us on Writing for Change. That'll be next Saturday at exactly 4 p.m. So your assignment for this week also posted on WhatsApp page. So if you are not on WhatsApp page, kindly join the WhatsApp page as well. So we hope to meet Godwin next week and also on our WhatsApp platform as well. You can share with us any challenges or any issues that you'll be having so that we can address it together as a team. We thank you all and have a lovely evening. Those of us in other countries, either morning or afternoon, we wish you all the best. We thank you all. So please, you have ended the session. We can say goodbye and take our leave. Thank you, Elprim. Thank you, Ferris.
Goodbye.
Thank you,
Goodbye.
Balkis.
Goodbye, chat.
Bye. Goodbye. Goodbye. Bye.